1. I'm definitely open to logical explanations anyone can suggest, as I have yet to think up any. About a year ago, my husband and I were sitting on the couch watching 21 Jump Street. We had seen the movie in theaters and watched it on DVD several times before. It was the middle of the movie, the part where that teacher catches the two in the hall, and they start tripping balls. My husband starts cracking up, and then in a split second, time had gone back to a couple seconds before. The same scene played again, and my husband laughed the same again. It wasn't déjà vu. Like I had felt I had experienced it before and knew what was going to happen. Rather, it was like on a YouTube video when you click a previous spot on the timer and it just jumps back there. 1 second I was experiencing life with my husband, and the next it was happening again. I've thought about maybe an absence seizure, but I would think that I would have ended up forward in time, not backward. Also, I was completely sober. My son, a year old at the time, sleeping in his bedroom. I had even quit drinking shortly after I had become pregnant with him, so it had been a good 2 years since I had taken any mind-altering substances of any kind. I also asked my husband if he experienced the same thing, and he had not. 2. When I was around 2.5 years old, my older brother died. I have vivid memories of him, all of which are accurate. We shared a room, so after he died, my family didn't know what to do with his belongings. For the most part, we left a lot of them out. One of the things that they left out was a piggy bank. We each had a smaller piggy bank, but his had a black spot and mine had a brown spot. They were glazed ceramic, and I was a kid, so my parents kept his piggy bank on the top shelf of my bookshelf, where I couldn't reach it and break it. I was probably 5 years old when this happened, since this was in our new house and after we moved. My mother was dusting my bookshelf. I stood in the doorway and talked to her. The phone rang in the master bedroom and she left my room to go and answer the phone in her room. I watched her go down the hallway, enter her room, then turn right toward where the phone was. I heard her pick it up and start talking. When I turned back to look in my room, my mother was still there in the exact same black, red, and yellow sweater, same permed hairstyle, same glasses and everything. I stood in the hallway just outside of my bedroom door. She looked at me and snarled, then reached up to the top shelf and pushed my deceased brother's piggy bank off and shattered it. She gave me a wicked glare and said, "You did this. You deserve this." I started crying and called for my mother. She heard the crash and crying and came out of her bedroom. I looked toward her and then back into my room, and evil mom was gone. My mother asked what happened to the piggy bank, and I told her, "You did it." She said, "I couldn't have done it. I was in the other room on the phone." I said, "It wasn't you, but it was you," and bawled my eyes out from fear and confusion. This wasn't the only time that I saw my mother's double. In her previous home, I would have been about 4 when I would lay at the foot of my bed at night while she watched TV in the other room, and I would see her walk from her bedroom to the TV room, and then 2 or 3 minutes later, she would walk down the hallway from her room again. It would also happen where I would see her walk from the doorway of the TV room back to her bedroom, and then see her do it again, although she had never left the bedroom to return to the TV room. It happened on several occasions, but I didn't really think anything of it. I just figured she walked around a lot at night. One time I did ask her about it. I said something like, "How did you walk through the hallway twice?" "You just walked from the living room and into your room, but you never left your room, and now you are walking to your room again." She replied that she hadn't been up at all recently, and that this was her first trip to her bedroom from the living room. After the bank smashing incident, I never saw anything like that from her again. I'm not a believer in the paranormal, but it certainly was strange, and has never left my memory. My mother still remembers my reaction to it. 3. This goes back about 17 years when I was 6. I lived in a small rural area in Phoenix, Arizona, on a quiet cul-de-sac. My family wasn't the most well-liked in the neighborhood, as several domestic issues arose there. But my mother did have one friend, named Margaret, who lived a few houses down on the opposite end of the road. I remember her as being somewhat of a timid lady, very jumpy and constantly scanning everything. Regardless of her zany personality, I enjoyed her visits with my mom, because it let me enjoy some Smash Brothers on the TV I couldn't normally use. Margaret and my mom spent at least a few days a week together. One time she made my sister and I a plate of cookies. I loved it because my mother and her boyfriend barely gave us food as it was, let alone anything junky. Then she ordered pizza for my family one time when St. Vincent de Paul wouldn't help us again. We moved out just before my 7th birthday. This was before cell phones and social media, and my family never had a phone line for that matter anyway. I didn't really think about the fact that moving away meant not seeing Margaret anymore, but I never heard from her again after leaving. My mom never mentioned her, and we had a slew of other problems to deal with at the time anyway, so it wasn't long before she was forgotten by me. Fast forward to a few years ago. My mother and I are on good terms again, and my sister and I decided to visit her. We sat around, cracked some beers, talked about the past. My sister had brought up the old house we lived in, and we all sat there fondly thinking about those times. Not long after leaving that house, my sister and I ended up in foster care, so the fondest memories we could have. I mentioned how much I enjoyed the company of my mom's friend Margaret, and wished we had a way to contact her. Both my sister and my mom looked puzzled. I gave several instances I could vividly remember of a woman being at the house with my mother. I remember eating a pizza when my mother and her scummy boyfriend had no money because of drugs. And I damn well remember eating fresh-ass cookies with my sister. The thing is, too, my sister remembers the pizza, but never my mom being with someone at the house. My mom doesn't recollect any of it. I didn't even know her last name, so it's not like I can look her up on Facebook, if she was even ever real. Please tell me there's an explanation here. It's really messed with my head, thinking that I made up Margaret. But my family seems to think that's the case. 4. I have always had extremely vivid dreams. Sometimes they are full-length movies that don't exist, with cohesive plots and consistent characters, exploring actual themes like a real film would. Sometimes it will be an insightful or devastatingly emotional conversation with someone I know personally or online. Other times they are horrific, with vivid scenes of torture or other atrocities, destroying my emotional stability for the remainder of the day and often haunting me for weeks or even years. I was diagnosed with PTSD and OCD several years ago, and have been on medication ever since. I soon found that the dampening of my dreams is a side effect of the meds. If I fail to take my meds, my dreams come back stronger and more vivid for better or worse. I dread falling asleep on days I realized I missed a pill. I am otherwise healthy and mentally sound, and I attend university and work part-time. The frightening thing is, some of the dreams come true. I had a dream my brother was going to have a surprise wedding, and the next day it happened. Everyone thought it was a cool coincidence. Then I had a dream our pastor was leaving the country with his family. I told everyone at breakfast about my dream, including the pastor's daughters who went to school with me. They looked at me like I had spoken in tongues, then quietly told me that they had planned to announce their impending move later that day. Another dream predicted that my sister-in-law was having a baby. I had told everyone about the dream already, and they were understandably weirded out. Even more so when they announced it, and my mother confirmed to my brother that I had already told her that detail months before, even accurately predicting the gender. When my brother told me personally, I reflexively replied, "I know." I don't know why I said that. It just came out and made it weirder. We changed the subject, and haven't talked about it in a long time. However, not all the predictions were easily shrugged off and forgotten. I had a dream of flying to a mountain and landing among the houses embedded in the rocky foothills. Not long after, I saw those same foothills when my mother moved our family to the Middle East, and enrolled me in a boarding school in the mountains that looked precisely like the dream. Even the surrounding village looked the same. Once there, the predictions darkened in tone. I dreamed of an airport bombed at the arrival gate, with me having just entered the glass-covered entrance. Months later, I would discover photos of that same airport disaster, with the same smoke, same tiled floor, same glass-covered entrance, and same bodies on the ground. I didn't have any prophetic dreams for a while until I had returned to America, and experienced what I thought was a nightmare of a terror attack at a school I had never seen with children I didn't know. We filed into the auditorium only to have the gunmen attack and kill those around me. I was shaken but ignored it until my mother told me a school had been attacked in the country we had just left. The relatives of a friend we met while in that country were at the school but had survived. I looked up the news article and was horrified. The photos showed the same school, the same auditorium, the same door I had entered through, from the green lawn outside. Even the exact red chair I had sat in, now surrounded by blood. I cried to my mother, telling her about the whole thing and reminding her of the dream I had told her about before the massacre had occurred. She was supportive, but had no clue what to do about my situation. In my day-to-day life, smaller versions of this phenomenon happen fairly frequently. A word or phrase will pop in my head, distinct from any other thoughts, as if they are being given to my mind instead of being produced by it. Then, seconds later, a person will say the same word or phrase to me. Sometimes it's words I don't even know. Like medical terminology, a med student will then say to me, "I haven't had a major dream for a while, and I hope nothing that tragic happens again." 5. About 5 years back, I took a college astronomy class with my older sister. It was an evening class which started around 6 p.m., and we were about halfway through for the night. I sat in the second row near the center of the room, with a very clear view of our professor, Mr. B. My sister sat in the seat to my left, and another girl to my right. Mr. B was talking about ancient astronomers and their inventions, and the 23 or so of us took notes. Occasionally, I experienced this strange audio phenomenon, where things suddenly sound jumbled and warped for a second or two. Then all goes back to normal. Well, this happened and surprised me a little, as it always does when it happens. I looked up from the notes I was taking, focusing on Mr. B, who had stopped talking, and was standing completely still in an unnatural stance. His mouth sort of hanging open mid-sentence, finger pointing up in the air, eyebrows raised. Confused, I turned to my sister, who was looking down at her notebook. Her arm hung in the air, holding her pencil steadily, about a centimeter from her notebook, also completely still. My head snapped over to the girl on my right. She sat in a similar, unmoving position. I looked around me, my heart pounding in my ears by then. The entire class was completely still and silent. No pens scribbling on paper, no pages rustling. No one interrupting Mr. B and asking him why he was standing there, pointing at the ceiling. I seemed to be the only one who noticed. I turned to the front of the class once more and saw these strange lavender lights begin to trickle down from mid-air, above Mr. B's head in straight lines. As soon as they reached eye level, suddenly everything just snapped out of it, and continued like nothing had happened. Mr. B finished his sentence as if he'd never paused at all. My sister and the girl to my right were both scribbling away furiously at their notebooks. trying to keep up with Mr. B's excited, fast-paced lecture. I was absolutely stunned. Now please bear in mind that this occurred within a matter of seconds. It was like someone hit a pause button and then pressed play again. I didn't tell my sister about this, but did later tell my mom and brother. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories 21. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed their stories to be used in this video. Oh, before I go on, I just want to add, I did a collaboration with Joey's Nightmares recently. I will include the link in the description so you guys can check that out. It was kind of a big collab featuring, let's see, Holly Wizzle, I've worked with her before, Beach Mystery, Hitchhiker, oh, Hellfreezer, I know him, yeah, he's quite good. Fourth Stories, Spooks McTrawl, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, bud, and Black Eyed Blonde. So if you head on over there, have a listen to the video. If you happen to enjoy anyone's stories you're not subscribed to, there are links in the description so you can head on over to their channels. Okay, and with that I think I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.